Hello everyone. This presentation is about a very interesting topic in biotechnology, which is biofuels. Biofuels, are they emerging as an alternative to the fossil fuels as a source of energy? This is going to be the focus of attention in this presentation. All living things on this planet are dependent on energy. Energy is very critical to the survival. And we have two sources of energy. One is renewable, the other is non renewable. So we are dependent on both renewable as well as non renewable sources of energy, sources for energy. So let's talk about renewable energy. Renewable energy is produced from natural sources that can be replenished over a period of time. Sources of renewable energy are often considered a more sustainable solution, as compared to the non-renewable sources of energy, because they are known to, produce very little amount of pollutants or no pollutants at all. They are also known to produce minimal amount of greenhouse gases, which generally are very harmful to the planet. Now, there are various renewable energy sources, each with its own benefits. Some of the main sources of renewable energy include solar, wind, hydroelectric, geothermal, and the biomass. Next is the non-renewable energy. Non-renewable energy comes from finite resources that eventually will be depleted and might completely finish. They are considered less sustainable and damaging to the planet, with non-renewable energy being responsible for producing pollutants such as greenhouse gases. Similar to the renewable energy, there are different types of non-renewable energy sources, which includes coal, oil, nuclear source of energy, and then natural gas. There is another important aspect of energy. Nowadays, we are hearing a lot about, green energy. So biofuels, are they considered to be the source of green energy? So let us understand that renewable is not the same as green. So a renewable energy source, as we have already understood, if there is a renewable energy source, it simply does not deplete. So example is solar, example is wind, hydroelectric sources, etc. A green energy, so when we talk about a green energy, it is also good for the planet because it does not harm ecosystems, which contribute to, let's say, acid rain, or they do not further aggravate the problem of global warming, climate change, temperature increase, etc. So if we look at the example of solar energy is green and also renewable, both, because solar energy does not contribute to worsen the ecosystems, like causing adverse impacts. So there's a statement which we need to understand, and that is all green energy is renewable. So it is considered renewable, but not all renewable energy is green. Why all renewable energy is not green? Because some of the renewable energy can lead to some pollutants or some factors which can bring harm to the ecosystem. So biofuels, they are the examples of renewable energy, definitely. So they are the source of renewable energy sources. that are not always green. That's the important part here. They are not always green because they do produce greenhouse gases. Now let us look at the consumption of energy at global level, and let us try to understand why we need to look for alternative sources of energy, and biofuel happens to be one of them. If we look at the global energy challenge, this is the title here that I have decided to give. So we have seen an exponential increase in the human and economic growth worldwide, which has impacted the consumption of coal, oil, and natural gas, which are non-renewable sources of energy. And because of their high demand, their prices have also gone up. And the world energy demand will continue to increase as a result of economic growth and expanding world population, which is actually expected to reach 8.6 billion by the year 2035. According to Annual Energy Outlook, Energy Information Administration USA, consumption of energy is expected to increase by 53% by 2035, and overall global demand is set to increase by 1/3 between 2010 and 2035, with China and India. These are the most populous countries which are going to be accounting for 50% of the growth. So according to World Oil Outlook report, we have OECD countries, which are the organization of the petroleum exporting countries. Ongoing extraction and consumption of crude oil is depleting the global crude oil resources, coupled with, so in addition to that, you have major uncertainties regarding the crude oil supply. So because of which the crude oil supply is expected to decrease in the years to come, because as the sources are going to be depleted, the crude oil supply is also going to be depleted, and this reduction will be compensated by an increase in unconventional and conventional oil supply, mainly from the biofuels, oil sands, and shale oil. And out of these, we are going to concentrate on biofuels. So as discussed earlier, depletion of petroleum fuel, petroleum derived fuels, like natural gas, etc., and also the environmental concern because of their use and overuse, this has prompted everyone to look for alternate sources of energy and fuel. And one of the focuses is on biofuels. So the term biofuel usually applies to liquid fuels and blending components produced from biomass materials called feedstocks. Most biofuels are used as transportation fuels, but they may also be used for heating purposes and also for electricity generation. Gaseous fuels produced from biomass that are used directly as a gas or converted to liquid fuels may qualify for use in many programs which are run by government, which promote or require the use of biofuels. So the terminology for different types of biofuels which is used in government legislation and various promotionable programs or incentive programs, and in industry branding and marketing efforts varies. For example, the names of biofuels may include preceding the type or use of the fuel with bio, such as biodiesel or biojet, or we have the words, like for example, advanced, alternative, clean, green, low carbon, renewable, or sustainable, like such as sustainable aviation fuel. So the definition for these biofuels may also differ depending on the government to government. I mean, like different governments, they have different definitions. Also, the language in the government's legislation and the programs that require or promote their use and among industry and other organizations. So, as mentioned earlier, the biofuels mainly they are, the focus is on using them as a transportation fuel. So leading application actually of biofuels it requires clean, dense, high power fuels, which could be in a liquid state, and they can be actually easily pumped and stored and used for fueling up the vehicles, different modes of transports. Second is power generation, which is, like solid biomass, using solid biomass fuel like wood, and then, using them for power generation. And then the last is heat, which is, using them in boilers. Especially this is more in cold countries where the energy is also needed to heat up the homes during severe winter conditions. So, if we look at the whole concept of energy and the concept of biomass, and then using that biomass to get energy, this whole concept we have learned from nature. And one of the major sources of energy, how energy can be utilized and converted into biomass, is the process of photosynthesis. So we all know that it's a biological carbon fixation process utilized by plants to obtain energy in the form of carbohydrates. I think all of us are familiar with the equation of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis creates biomass that can be converted to renewable bioenergy. So that is one way, like how the plants are fixing the renewable bioenergy. The second is the residues from these plants and also animals and microbial biomass. This is once the plants are dead, animals are dead, and we have microbes which are already, we don't see them with the naked eyes, but we all acknowledge that they are there. So this biomass, the residues from plants, animals, and microbial biomass, can be converted by microorganisms to useful energy outputs, which includes methane, hydrogen, etc., and sometimes also electricity. So microbial biomass can also be harvested directly as biofuel. One of the example is, for example, biodiesel. So what is biomass? Biomass is organic, meaning it is made up of material that comes from living organisms such as plants and animals. So this is the meaning of organic. And biomass is dead organic matter, because this is the one that we are trying to use in biofuels. The most common biomass material used for energy are, of course, plants, wood, and waste. And these are called biomass feedstocks. So, biomass energy can also be a non-renewable energy source. Because remember, if we do not have plants anymore, we will not be able to get the biomass is missing. So then the biofuels will also not be there. So this is a little difficult for you to understand, but I think the concept is very clear. Biomass, we are talking about getting energy from biomass. What are the sources of biomass? Biomass, so we should know what is a biomass. So biomass is dead organic matter. So we have examples of kernels of corn, we have mats of algae, stalks of sugar cane. If you have a stalk of sugar cane, then you will get the biomass. If you don't have, then you don't have the biomass and you cannot produce energy. So this is what one needs to understand. We have two types of biomass: woody biomass and non-woody biomass. So the examples of woody biomass are, coconut, oil palm, poplar pine, etc. Generally, these are burned to heat space or heat water to produce steam to generate electricity, via use of a turbine generator. And when they are utilized directly, then it's called a direct biomass use. The other type of biomass is non-woody. So obviously it's very clear, that you have plants, which have woods in it, like coconut and all. So woody biomass, and weaker plants, which do not have a strong bark and wood and all. These are non-woody. So examples are corn, sugarcane, soybean, algae. Generally, these are processed to produce different liquid biofuels. So these are actually indirect biomass use. So this is the direct biomass, where you have the woody biomass, and non-woody is the indirect biomass. So why are we talking about biomass? Because we can use this biomass to produce biofuel. So there are methods where biomass energy can be converted into liquid biofuels. And mainly we have two methods. In the method number 1, sugar crops. So method 1 involves sugar crops or starch which are grown, and then through the process of fermentation, ethanol is produced, and ethanol becomes the biofuel which is used. In the second method, the plants which produce oil, natural oil, these are grown. For example, jatropha and algae. So these are the plants, they are grown because they naturally produce oil. And then after extracting oil from these plants, the oils are heated and their viscosity is reduced, and then they are directly used as fuels in the diesel engines. The other method is these oils are further treated and converted into biodiesel, which is also used for various purposes, like in the transport vehicles or heating up the homes. Now let us look at some of the plants which are the source of woody biomass. So number 1, we have coconut. So in areas with abundant coconut trees, after harvesting the meat or the edible part of the coconut, so this is the edible part of the coconut, so this is actually removed, and the hull, so this is the hull, this is converted into a biobriquette. Biobriquette is it is a block of compressed coal dust or peat, which is the one which is used as fuel. So the benefit of this biomass is that it burns very efficiently and it leaves very little residue. And this has actually resulted in biobriquettes being used for cooking, particularly in developing countries and underdeveloped countries, especially the ones where you have coconut as a major crop. The other one is oil palm. The oil palm provides biomass in two ways. The fruit produces oil which can be harvested and then chemically converted to produce biodiesel. So after the oil is harvested, you still have the hulls, from the hull of the fruit. Now this hull can be burned directly. So oil palm provides both direct and indirect biomass for the production of biofuel. If you this is just a little bit more information. Oil palm is also used for palm oil, which is the oil that we also use for cooking purposes. So one needs to keep it in mind that palm oil, which is also being used for cooking purposes, it is also now being used for as a biofuel for the transportation purposes. Next is poplar. The poplar family includes trees like aspen and cottonwood, etc. And these trees are valued for their rapid growth. As you can see, they have very fast growth rate and great heights. They are reasonably resistant to diseases. They have the ability to provide habitat and ability to be cultivated from spouts cut from the adult trees, which actually reduces the overall cost of growing a tree in the long term. So these are another very good source of biomass, woody biomass, which are being used for the production of biofuel. And then we have the pine, which is, again, it is valued for many reasons, similar to what I mentioned to you about poplar. It grows very fast, it is easy to cultivate, and it is relatively inexpensive to grow. And this is another important thing, is that this can also grow in cold areas, cold regions of the different places on the planet. Non-woody biomass. Non-woody biomass is formed mostly from high energy crops, for example, sugarcane, maize, beetroot, etc. And also the waste which comes from food waste, industrial waste, animal waste, etc. Non-woody biomass generally have lower lignin content than the woody materials, and it's a common waste material, which is, as I already mentioned to you, you can find it can be found in agriculture, processing plants and fields, etc. Besides, as you can see here, shell nut, groundnut waste, so on and so forth. Non-woody biomass is often bulky, it has weight and has a comparatively low energy content compared to the woody ones. However, non-woody materials sourced from agriculture waste are abundant and they are often very cheap. Therefore, they are also used as a source of energy, producing biofuels. Now let us look at some of the examples of the sources of non-woody biomass. A number of different grasses come under this category, and the most commonly discussed is switchgrass. Switchgrass has the potential to be used both directly and indirectly. Its high cellulose content makes it an ideal direct biomass. In some settings, it is burned directly, whereas in others, it is mechanically converted into pellets, and then these pellets can be easily transported and they can also be stored easily. As the ability to generate ethanol from the cellulose content continues to advance, switchgrass is becoming or has become a very attractive option for using it as a source of producing ethanol. The benefits of switchgrass over other biomass include they are perennial. That is, you can they can grow all in all seasons, which lowers the cost of cultivating them. And then improved soil quality from not plowing each year. Then they have a relatively high yield on marginal land, the land which is generally not suitable for food production. So that land goes waste, and because these switchgrass can easily grow on those lands, those marginal lands can be effectively utilized. And then these are drought and pest resistant, so they can become a constant source of producing biofuels. And then they have a low water and fertilizer needs. Another source of non-woody biomass is the municipal solid waste, also known as MSW. So this refers to things like landfill gas, human waste, grass and yard clippings. All of these sources of energy are in many cases simply being allowed to go to waste. So these are the ones which are actually used as a source of energy to produce biofuels. Though not as clean as solar and wind energy, the carbon footprints of these fuels is actually much less than that of the traditionally derived fossil fuels. Municipal solid waste, which is MSW, as I mentioned to you. So this is a short form. We often, when you read papers on solid waste, they generally refer to the municipal solid waste as MSW. This is often actually your trash or garbage. This is the one that the common language is garbage or trash. This is burnt to produce, for example, steam in a boiler, and then the steam is used to power an electric generator turbine. So MSW is actually a mixture of energy-rich materials such as papers and plastic, and as I mentioned to you, yard waste, which is, you have a lot of products which are made from wood. So we have the data from United States. So for every 100 pounds of MSW in the United States, about 85 pounds can be burned as fuel to generate electricity. And this process also helps to reduce 2,000 pounds of garbage to ash that weighs between 300 pounds to 600 pounds. So from 2,000 pounds of garbage, you get energy. At the same time, you get ash, which is the waste product or byproduct, which is only the weight of that is only between 300 to 600 pounds. And they reduce the volume of the waste by about almost 87%. And therefore, MSW is also being used as a source of biofuels. So when we look at the terminologies of biofuels as counterpart of the traditional fossil fuels, so here we have gasoline or ethane. The term that we use, which is your biofuel, is ethanol. For fossil fuels, we use the word diesel. For biofuel, we use the word biodiesel. Fossil fuels, methane. For biofuel, we use the word methanol. For fossil fuel, we use the word gasoline or butane. And for the biofuel, we use the word or terminology biobutanol. As mentioned and discussed up till now, we know that there are different sources of biofuels, and people have been focusing their attention on finding methodologies using which one can efficiently get biofuels from these different sources of biomass, which are generally used for the production of biofuels. And over a period of time, these methods have become more and more efficient. So, based on that, we have different types of biofuels. So, biofuels are classified into four generations, and let's look at them one by one. So, types of biofuels, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we have four types of biofuels: first generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation. The first generation biofuels are also called conventional biofuels. They are made from things like sugar, starch, or vegetable oil. Please note that these are all food products. So, any biofuel made from a feedstock that can also be consumed as a human food is considered a first generation biofuel. I also mentioned to you the palm oil. Palm oil, it is producing oil, the vegetable oil, which is also consumed by human beings. So, these are known as first generation biofuels. It is important to note that the structure of the biofuel itself does not change between the different generations, but rather the source from which the fuel is derived has changed over a period of time, and that's why we call them first generation, second generation, third generation, and fourth generation. The first generation biofuels suffer from some of the common problems, such as because we are using the food items to make the biofuels, there is a threat to the food chain. Increasing carbon emissions when planted outside the traditional agriculture settings, and then there is a intense growth requirements to grow these kind of plants and crops, and therefore this first generation biofuel led to the use of second generation biofuels. So and then later on the second generation led to the third generation, and so on, and the fourth generation. So they will continue to the first generation will continue to provide biofuel for in the near future. Their importance will slowly become less as we are going to have more and more alternatives which now have become part of the second generation, third generation, and fourth generation biofuels. The second generation biofuels, these are produced from sustainable feedstock. So the sustainability of a feedstock is defined by its availability, its impact on greenhouse gas emission, its impact on land use, and by its potential to threaten the food supply. So in order to qualify as a second generation, a feedstock must not be suitable for human consumption. That's the condition. And we should be able to grow on marginal land. What is marginal land? Remember, I told you non-agricultural land, because on the agricultural land the farmers are going to grow crops which are going to be important for the consumption of human beings. So there are lands on which nothing can grow, but these crops should be able to grow, from which we can get the biofuels. These should not require a great amount of water or fertilizer. Certain food products can become second generation fuels when they are no longer useful for consumption. In this category, we have waste vegetable oil, which are not used anymore, and these are second generation feedstock. We also have the example of virgin vegetable oil, which generally comes under the category of first generation feedstock. But over a period of time, maybe people will find that these vegetable oils are not good for the health of human beings, so you are not going to use them for human consumption, and then they can become the part of the second generation biofuels. Second generation biofuels are also referred to as advanced biofuels. So what is going to be the source of second generation biofuels? Industrial waste, woods that we do not use anymore, grasses that we don't use, we have forest residues, etc. Next, we have the third generation biofuels, unofficial category reserved for biofuels which are derived from algae. This is the one which comes under third generation. Previously, algae were considered second generation biofuels. However, when it became apparent that algae are capable of much higher yields with very lower resource input than other feedstock, many suggested that they should be moved to their own exclusive category. Therefore, they are considered under the third generation biofuel. The algae-based biofuels, they require a unique production mechanism and potentially offer solutions to mitigate most of the drawbacks of the first and the second generation biofuels. And then we have the fourth generation biofuels. This is the latest biofuel generation, and it refers to the use of genetic engineering to increase the desired traits of organisms used in biofuel production. So this applies to a variety of traits, from utilizing multiple types of sugars, for example, penthoses, hexoses, and then to higher lipid synthesis or increased photosynthesis, increased carbon fixation, etc. We have the model organisms such as E. coli, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, the yeast. We have a wide variety of tools we are using for genetic engineering, which is going to regulate the endogenous pathways or of making these fuels, or also inserting new pathways which can lead to more production of biofuel. So basically, fourth generation includes genetically modified organisms. So not only algae, here I mentioned algae, but it can include E. coli, yeast, and many other processes where we can use organisms which show improved traits for the production of biomass, and which can be converted into biofuels. In fact, we need to do our own assessment and evaluation about the advantages and disadvantages of using these different types of biofuels. Most of the biofuel consumption occurs as a blend. So you have to blend them with the the petroleum products, with refined petroleum products, such as you have gasoline, diesel fuel, heating oil, kerosene type jet fuel, etc. However, some biofuels do not require blending with their petroleum counterparts, and these are referred to as drop-in biofuels. The US Energy Information Administration, EIA, publishes data on 4 major categories of biofuels. We have ethanol, which is an alcohol fuel that is blended with petroleum gasoline for use in vehicles and accounted for the largest share of US biofuel production, almost 85%, and consumption, which was 82% in 2021. So this is in billion gallons, and what I'm telling you is in percentage. The second is biodiesel, a biofuel that is usually blended with petroleum diesel for consumption and accounts for the second largest share of US biofuel production, almost 11%, and consumption was 12% in 2021. Then we have the renewable diesel. This is the third category. This is a fuel chemically which is similar to petroleum diesel fuel, and this is used as a drop-in fuel or a petroleum diesel blend with small but growing US production and consumption. The renewable diesel's percentage shares of total US biofuel production and consumption were about 3% and 5% respectively in 2021. And we have whatever doesn't come in this category comes in the other biofuel category. So other biofuels include renewable heating oil. We have renewable jet fuel, which are the other word is sustainable aviation fuel, alternative jet fuel, biojet. These are the other alternative terms. We have renewable naphtha, renewable gasoline, and other emerging biofuels that are at the moment in various stages of development and commercialization. So all these categories come under other biofuels. Now let us look at the situation of use and production of biofuels in the Philippines. The Philippines passed the Law of Biofuel Act or Republic Act 9367 in 2007, mandating the blending of biofuels in all petroleum fuels. This law mandates the biofuel blending of 20% bioethanol and 10% biodiesel by 2020, by the year 2020. However, limited investments in biofuel production, infrastructure, sustainable supply of feedstock, fluctuating prices of petroleum and coconut oil in the global market, as well as inadequate support for biofuels over the traditional fuel force the government to set the blends to only 10% and 2% for bioethanol and biodiesel respectively, as against the 20 and 10% which was mandated by this law. We have current mandated ethanol blend for gasoline, which has stayed at 10% since 2012. The ethanol producers in the country, they have been pushing to raise the blend from 10% to at least 15%. If we can't achieve the 20%, at least 15%, to further pull down the gasoline prices and generate more savings from the the reduction in the greenhouse gas emissions. Feedstocks such as sugarcane and molasses are used for bioethanol synthesis, whereas coconut oil is used mainly for biodiesel production. So molasses is the primary raw material which is sourced from sugar operations that produce it as a byproduct in the production of alcohol and ethanol. Currently, President Marcos is being requested to allow the bioethanol industry to import molasses during the non-milling season, because the country is facing shortage of 500,000 metric tons of molasses and raw materials. So though we have coconut, lot of crops of coconut and sugarcane, we do have the shortage of raw material, because of which the 20% blending and 10% for 20% for bioethanol and 10% for biodiesel has those targets have not been achieved so far. Now let us look at some of the common plants, which are used as or their biomass is used for the production of biofuel. So we can call them biofuel plants. So one of the examples is corn. Corn is generally considered as the king of ethanol-based biofuels. Corn, and along with corn, other high starch grains have been converted into ethanol for thousands of years. Yet only in the past few decade or so, its use as fuel greatly increased. Conversion includes grinding of the the plant, the cobs and everything, cooking with enzymes, fermentation with yeast, and then distillation to remove the water. From fuel ethanol, two more steps are included. To get ethanol, we have to add two more steps. One of the steps is using a molecular sieve to remove the the last drop of the water, or completely the water needs to be removed using a molecular sieve, and then denaturing to make the ethanol undrinkable. Then this ethanol is blended with gasoline to use in existing car engines. This mixture releases less carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxide, and sulfur than the normal gasoline, which actually leads to less of pollution, release of pollutants, especially the smog that we get. If you see during Christmas time, we often see smog around Manila, actually more around Manila, where you have more of vehicular transmission. The kernels of the corn, these are used because the main body of the plant contains cellulose, which is far more difficult and expensive to break down. So it is only the kernel which is used for conversion into the bioethanol. Sugarcane as a biofuel plant. Sugarcane is another primary source of feedstock from which ethanol is derived for use in automobile fuels. Sugarcane based ethanol has an energy balance that is 7 times greater than that of corn based ethanol. So what is energy balance? Energy balance is the difference between the energy expended to convert the crop into ethanol and the amount of energy released from its consumption. There are several reasons why this occurs. First, unlike sugar, only 50% of the dry mass of corn kettles, the starch, can be converted into ethanol. Once this is done, the starch must be converted into sugar before it can be distilled into ethanol. There is no need for these first steps when we are using sugar-based ethanol. This significantly reduces the operation costs of the sugar-based ethanol compared to corn-based ethanol. Hence, producing ethanol from sugarcane is 6 times cheaper than using corn. So, what are the advantages of using sugarcane as a biofuel plant? Number one, infrastructure for planting, harvesting, and processing that is already in place. So you don't have to because we are anyway growing sugarcane for the production of sugar. There is no land use changes provide plantation sizes remain stable. So we don't have to have extra land to grow sugarcane. So wherever the sugarcane generally grows, we can use the same land for the purposes of growing it as a biofuel. The yield is higher than that of corn at an average of 650 gallons per acre, and the carbon dioxide emissions can be 90% lower than for as compared to conventional gasoline when land use changes do not occur. The disadvantages of using sugarcane include, despite having a higher yield than corn, it is still relatively low. The yield is low, compared to the corn, it is high, but overall, it is still low. There are very few regions and lands which are actually suitable for its cultivation. And the third most important part is sugarcane is a food staple in countries of South and Central America. So if you are going to use sugarcane more for biofuel purposes, the food security gets threatened. One of the other examples of biofuel plants is jatropha, which is also known as a wonder crop. So what is a wonder crop? A wonder crop is an agricultural product that is new or rediscovered with bio properties that promise to solve any number of problems. From agricultural and environmental issues, soil condition, air quality, to economic and social issues such as wealth distribution, gender equality, etc., etc., etc. So wonder crops offer easy solutions to some of the pressing issues, and Jatropha curcas happens to be one of the wonder crops. Jatropha curcas, it's a drought tolerant perennial plant that thrives in the poor or marginal soil, that is low grade land or poor nutrient soil, otherwise not useful for agriculture or pastures. It is easy to grow, it has a fast growth rate, and it can generate seeds for up to 50 years. The greatest appeal of Jatropha as a commercial crop lies in its ability to produce biodiesel. So this is a biodiesel based biofuel. One Jatropha plant can provide a liter of biodiesel fuel per year for 40 years. So the plant seeds are used and they are crushed to release the oil for biodiesel production. But it's not only the seeds, but the seed cases, the outer covering, and also the vegetable matter, that is also not wasted. So those are also now are being used as a biomass fuel. So as you can see here, this is the Jatropha oil that you can get from which you can get the biodiesel, so from the seeds and also from the other parts of the plant. Rapeseed or canola. Rapeseed is an annual plant, 30 centimeter or 1 foot or more tall. This belongs to the mustard family, Brassicaceae, which is grown from its seeds, which yield canola or rapeseed oil. The esterified form of the oil is used as a lubricant for jet engines and can be made into biodiesel. Many biodiesels tend not to fare well in cold climates because vegetable oils are high in saturated fats, which allows the ice crystals to form at low temperature. And generally, this is not good for combustion engines. Canola just happens that it is low in saturated fats, which gives it a huge advantage to use in colder environments than its other alternatives. Rapeseeds are also relatively high in oil content compared to most plants, making them great crops for making biofuels. Another example is the oil from palm trees. So palm oil is extracted from the fruits of palm trees also known as palm kernel oil. And it is the most efficient raw material for developing second generation biofuels. Diesel engines also do not need to be converted to run on the palm oil either. So, the palm oil biodiesel, because this is again we are producing biodiesel from this, it is less polluting than gasoline. Palm oil, has helped develop economies of countries like Malaysia and Indonesia. However, the growing of the palm trees for biodiesel in these countries has led to the burning of thousands of acres of rainforest each day for acquiring more and more land to grow these crops. This destruction threatens the ecosystem, and it has also endangered thousands of plants and animal species in these countries. Malaysia and Indonesia together produces 85% of the world's palm oil, and the Malaysian government is planning to combine 5% palm biodiesel with 95% petroleum diesel, in a way very similar to the addition of 10% ethanol into the gasoline in the United States, or 20% of ethanol in the Philippines, the target that these countries have set up. Soybean. Soybean or glycine max, it is a major crop throughout much of North America, South America, and also Asia. The United States is the world's greatest producer and approximately produces 32% of the world's soybeans, followed by Brazil, which produces 28% of the total world's production of soybean. Therefore, most biodiesel in the USA is made from soybeans. Motor vehicles, heavy equipment, and even buses can run on pure soybean biodiesel, or by blending the soya biodiesel with more traditional diesel fuels. The National Academy of Sciences states soybean diesel yields more energy than corn ethanol. Approximately 18 to 20% oil is produced from the soya beans compared to other oil seed crops such as canola and sunflower, etc., which uses 40% and sunflower is 43%. According to the Food and Agriculture Organization, about 70% of the biodiesel in the world is produced from vegetable oils, with soybean oil being the second most widely used vegetable oil in the biodiesel industry. So, what are the advantages of biofuels? It is very clear. Replacing the fossil fuels with biofuels will have the potential to reduce undesirable environmental impacts of fossil fuel production and use, which includes conventional and greenhouse gas emission, pollutant emissions, exhaustible resource depletion, our dependence on unstable foreign suppliers. All these are going to be taken care of when we are going to slowly switch over to biofuels as a transport fuel in lieu of using the fossil fuels. Demand for biofuels is going to also increase the farm income. So the farmers are going to benefit. Many countries where these crops can grow easily, they are going to become self-sufficient, independent, and not dependent on their energy sources to other countries, especially the countries which export petroleum fuels or petroleum-based fossil fuels. According to the experts from Nebraska Ethanol Board, ethanol reduces greenhouse gas emission up to 65%. Scientists in Australia say biodiesel made from cooking oil reduces greenhouse gas emission by 87% compared to the petroleum diesel. Um, uh, Biofuels are going to have a huge impact on the sustainability factor. We know that one day the world will run out of fossil fuels, and with once the fossil fuels are gone, our main source of energy will also disappear. But since biofuels are made from plants that can grow and be replanted again and again, they contribute towards sustainable technologies. The economic development also is very important. When we are going to reduce the dependence on foreign oil, many countries, especially the developing countries, they will be expected to invest in biofuel industry, which is going to fuel their economic development, especially benefiting the poor and the people who are living in the rural areas. So there is going to be job creation in the rural areas. Um, Experts at the International Food Policy Institute, which is also known as IFPI, they have said that in Tanzania, ethanol made from a shrub called cassava helped to reduce the poverty in West African nation, in especially Tanzania in particular, and West African region, almost to a very impressive numbers by hiring 80% of the farmers as labor force. So the the poverty reduction happened because these farmers were hired by the different organizations which were involved in the production of ethanol by using cassava. Cassava is the local crop, which is actually a staple a plant and food item, which is consumed by many regions of African continent. As far as the job creations are concerned, the biofuel industry can help the local communities by providing well-paying jobs for individuals and economic development for municipalities. According to the biotechnology industry organization, it's called BIO. By 2022, the biofuel industry was projected to create 1,90,000 direct green jobs and 6,10,000 indirect jobs. However, this target was not achieved because of many factors. One of the major factors was the COVID-19 pandemic. So overall, summarizing the advantages of biofuels: biofuel use leads to reduction of the greenhouse gas emission. It leads to economic development of especially countries which are reliant on importing fossil fuels. Philippines happens to be one of them. The use of biofuels will lead to security, energy security, independence of these countries. Biofuel refineries are cleaner, so we are going to invest into more clean technologies, which is going to lead to sustainable solutions to one of the major problems of dependence on fossil fuels and causing pollution and causing greenhouse gas emissions. So those problems are going to be solved, if not solved, maybe reduced considerably, which is going to lead to a sustainable solution. And all these efforts are going to create jobs in the rural areas, which is going to further have an impact on the economic development and economy of a particular country. Let us look at some of the disadvantages of biofuels. Yes, there are certain disadvantages, definitely. The production and use of biofuels depend on other renewable sources such as water, soil, nutrients, and more. So, when you have excessive production of biofuels, it may lead to the exploitation of natural resources, due to which the production of food crops can be affected. So, it can lead to the endangered food security. Using more organic material to produce biofuels can reduce the availability of crops for food production. Food versus fuel. That is going to be the dilemma, which is going to, lead to the risk of diverting farmland or crops for biofuel production to the detriment of the food supply. And I already gave you the example of Malaysia and Indonesia, where the forests are being cleared, to create land to grow these palm trees and coconut trees in order to use them for production of biodiesel. So land use changes, impact on biodiversity is going to be impacted because of the production of biofuel. One of the most crucial problem which is related to biofuels is food insecurity. We have 842 million people in the world which are estimated to be suffering from not getting regular healthy food in their life. So this issue of not getting enough food, which is also we are talking about food security, this problem is going to be further aggravated or exacerbated by the rapid development of biofuel industry across the globe. How? By the conversion of land such as forests and wetlands into agricultural land, which is a process known as indirect land use change. So this is known as land use changes. And this could result in an increased levels of greenhouse gas in the atmosphere by reducing the presence of natural carbon sinks. So the plants and soils, they generally store carbon, and when you remove them and create land just for growing only one particular type of crop, it is going to lead to increased levels of greenhouse gas emission. The amount of land required to meet the world's energy needs using biofuels is a major concern. So depending on the feedstock, the requirements can be massive. If you look at the numbers which are needed, or the amount of land that would be needed to meet the requirement of, if we just take the example of global aviation industry, the jet fuel or the biojet for the aeroplanes. So just giving you some numbers. We talk about Jatropha plant. Jatropha plant would need to be planted over 2.7 million square kilometers in order to get the global aviation, fuel for global aviation industry. So just to give you a perspective, 2.7 million square kilometers is the area which is 1/3 the size of Australia. Camelina would require an area of 2 million square kilometers. Algae, remember we talked about algae as a second generation biofuel. It would need 68,000 square kilometers to meet the needs of the aviation industry, which is an area roughly the size of all of Ireland, the country Ireland. The aviation industry accounts for only 13% of all fuel consumption. So the values that I narrated a few minutes back would need to be increased tenfold to include the global fuel demand. So aviation is only part of it. We have land transport, we have sea transport. So if you imagine all of that, with that, we need huge area of land for fulfilling the demand for biofuels using these sources. Um, uh, if we think of all the fuel demands, like land, sea, air, Jetropa would be needed to be planted on 27 million square kilometers just to meet all fuel demand. And this is the area that covers all of Russia and United States, and still needs little bit more. So you can imagine, Russia is huge, United States is huge. You combine these two countries, the area of these two countries plus some more, that is 27 million square kilometers. Algae, if you are going to use algae to fulfill all the demands for global biofuel, it is going to require 680,000 square kilometers, which is all of France plus little bit more. So if you see, there is not enough land currently in use to meet the fuel needs. This means lot of forested areas will be cleared, and this is going to release vast amount of carbon, and it is going to create the carbon debt that is going to take centuries to repay. Hence, we need to actually be mindful of how or balance out how to use the biomass to make biofuels, because the regional suitability is very important, in which region which plant is to be used, so that we do not exploit natural resources too much. Food security should not be threatened. The land use changes should be minimum, and we should not have any impact on biodiversity, because if that's going to happen, we are going to have monocrops, and those monocrops, because of the different techniques that we are using in the production of biofuels, it is going to lead to the emission of greenhouse gas emission, though not as high as fossil fuels, but still considerable amount, so leading to overall global warming. Among the different disadvantages that we discussed in the previous slide, the one which I think is most relevant with reference to Philippines is the impact of production of biofuels on biodiversity. Remember, Philippines is a biodiversity hotspot. So biodiversity refers to the variety of different living things in an environment. Using more land to grow biofuel feedstock crops could lead to expansion of cultivated areas, reducing the biodiversity by displacing forests, grasslands, wetlands, etc. When you grow a single type of corn, for the production of biofuels, it is easier because we can select the type of corn that yields the best raw product, is easiest to grow, and it is the one which requires the least amount of water and other resources. This actually sounds very great, but then the other side to that is the pests that can eat this type of corn will begin to proliferate. What is worse, if we spray the corn with the pesticides to kill these pests, some will inevitably become resistant to the pesticide, and over a period of time these pests are going to grow in number, and we will be left with pests that are resistant to the chemical pesticides that we have used so far. In the end, we are going to end up with a bigger problem than what we started with, and probably no corn because the new super pest, might eat it all or might destroy the entire crop of the corn. So, biodiversity is important to ensure that these pests do not grow out of control. The type of farming needed to produce large quantities of biofuels is generally not amenable to high levels of biodiversity. And this presents a fundamental problem in producing biofuels that is enhanced by the fact that there could be production of super pests, which can lead to further threatening of the food crops also, not only the crops and plants which you are growing to for the biofuels production purposes, but also there is going to be a threat to the other food crops. Regarding the connection between the use of biofuels and the global warming, the debate is still going on. It is true that biofuels produce carbon dioxide, which is a potent greenhouse gas, and the one most often blamed for global warming. However, it is also true that growing plants, consume carbon dioxide. Thus, the equation becomes a simple balancing act. If the plants we grow utilize the same amount of carbon dioxide that we produce, then we will have a net increase of zero and no global warming. However, research has shown that energy must be invested into producing crops and converting them into biofuels before any energy is obtained. A study from Cornell University found that producing ethanol from corn used almost 30% more energy than it produced. In other words, you can't produce a perpetual motion machine using biofuels because you lose the energy you invest in creating them in the first place. The other problem is that we run into with biofuels with respect to carbon dioxide is not the only greenhouse gas that we have to worry about. So, carbon dioxide emission is one part of the story. There are other chemicals. For example, nitrous oxide, which is also a greenhouse gas. And remember, growing plants use fertilizers, which produces a lot of nitrous oxide. Fertilizers, they contain nitrogen, which we know that plants need to grow. But most plants cannot convert molecular nitrogen into the elemental nitrogen that they need. So for this process, the plants, they are dependent on the bacteria. Now, the bacteria not only produce nitrogen that plants can use, they also produce nitrogen products like nitrous oxide. And the amount of production is more than what it was initially thought. So the net result is that maybe with respect to carbon dioxide, there is an balancing of equation. Okay, so balancing of equation, but in terms of nitrous oxide or nitrogen oxide, the equation balancing is not there. Hence, this can lead to global warming, but carbon dioxide equation, if efforts are made, some balancing act can be carried out. However, these are the different gases which leads to global warming. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the slide, the debate is still going on if there is a significant reduction in global warming because of biofuels use or not. The research and the debate is still going on regarding the carbon equations when we are using biofuels. In Singapore, in a study connected with biofuels and carbon emissions, the Global Center for Maritime Decarbonization, GCMD, found net carbon emission fell 20% using a vegetable oil biofuel blend compared with very low sulfur fuel oil, which is also known as VLSFO, in a trial for a dual fuel liquefied petroleum gas carrier. So the research is still going on, and people are still trying to figure out if there is going to be a reduction in the carbon emission when we are using biofuels. Nevertheless, biofuels is a hot topic, and therefore many countries in the world are focusing on increasing the production of biofuels in their country, in their region. The Global Biofuel Alliance launched at the G20 this year with the aim of boosting the supply and demand for biofuels has gained a lot of attention this year. It brings together 19 countries and 12 international organizations, including the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, and the Asian Development Bank, to try to expand the use of sustainable biofuels. Countries also introduced rules on blending of the biofuels to raise demand for the biofuels and help develop the biofuel industry. Nigeria is pushing for petrol sales with blends of 90% gasoline with 10% ethanol, a renewable fuel made from plant materials, and for 2080 blend for biodiesel with standard diesel. So they are trying to make it mandatory, like a rule for, global rule or something like that. The goal of the Global Biofuel Alliance is to boost the biofuel industry by helping advances in the biofuel technology, by increasing the use of sustainable biofuels to counter the conventional fossil fuels, to shape the robust standard setting and certification. And this alliance will also act as a knowledge hub. For example, if there's a country which wants to increase the production of biofuel, how do they set up the industry, how they are going to do the whole thing. So they can approach this alliance in order to get the information. And the alliance will also help to foster global collaboration and work to ensure secure and affordable supplies of biofuels. In fact, the Climate Ethanol Alliance, this is the one which joined this year's UN Climate Change Conference in order to showcase the biofuel industry's efforts towards the transition to low carbon, and to inform conversations around accelerating the implementation of the Paris Climate Change Agreement in the transport sector. Since transport is responsible for approximately 23% of the total energy-related carbon dioxide global emissions, this alliance believes that biofuels, which have a much lower carbon footprints than fossil fuels, would be able to reduce the carbon emissions of gasoline vehicles in the short run. Biofuel is a very strong component in achieving a circular economy. The bioeconomy or circular economy encompasses sustainable production, consumption, and transportation. Individuals are using renewable fuel sources to eliminate waste within the economy, transitioning away from fossil fuels and moving towards biofuels, which can reduce emissions and improve employment. Creating a circular economy with biofuels can generate more jobs. The fuel sector is going to need more employees to, for example, develop biodiesel and other alternative energy sources. Individuals can also use biodiesel in diesel engines without modifications. But if these modifications are needed, then we again need experts and individuals who can make changes in the vehicles in order for the vehicles to use the biodiesel. It The use of biodiesels is going to minimize the particulate matter, almost nearly 47% on an average. So the individuals are going to additionally support the circular economy by improving the material recyclability. So all this is going to make biofuel an important component of the circular economy. Biofuels can generate a lot of jobs. Biofuels are the focus of attention for achieving many sustainable goals. Hence, lot of people are taking interest and they are opening startups. Kindly click on this link that I have shared on this slide, and you can actually see which are the top biodiesel startups and biofuel startups which are already there, and how they are faring and how much is their investment and how well these companies are doing. Philippines is one of the countries where there is a lot of scope for setting up these startups which can contribute towards the production of biofuels. So when you are going to look at the top companies, it will give you an idea how much investment you need and what exactly is the thrust of these companies at the moment as far as the production of biofuels is concerned. With this, we come to the end of this presentation. Thank you so much for listening. For more information on this topic and to do a self-assessment test, please visit my website www.biotechnologyforyou.com.